Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Dorset Council Northern Area Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Sherry Jesperson, and I am chair of this committee. As usual, this meeting is being live streamed to the public, and a recording of it will be available on the Dorset Council website in due course. Before we start, could we please take an alphabetical roll call of the members here present? When I call your name, could you unmute your microphones, indicate that you're present, and then remute? Thank you very much. So, Councillor John Andrews.
Yeah, Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne East Ward, present. Thank
you. Councillor Tim Cook. Councillor Cook. No. Councillor Les Fry.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Les Fry present, Dorchester West.
Thank you, Les. Councillor Matt Hall.
Good morning, Councillor Matt Hall, Sherborne West present.
Councillor Brian Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Brian Heatley, Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth.
Councillor Carol Jones.
Morning, here, present correct, Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton.
Thank you. Councillor Emma Parker.
She's given apologies, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mary Penfold.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Penfold representing Yetminster Ward.
Thank you, Mary. Councillor Val Pothecary.
Good morning. Val Pothecary, Gillingham Ward. Thank you.
Councillor Belinda Rideout.
She's also given apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor David Taylor.
Good morning. I'm Councillor David Taylor from Charminster St Mary with you today.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. So we didn't have Councillor Tim Cook. Are you there now, or do we have your apologies? Okay, Councillor Cook appears to be not with us for this part of the meeting. Of course, it may be a technical difficulty. He may join us later, but for the time being, if we could note that he's not here. We also have a number of Dorset Council officers participating in this meeting as the day goes on, and so they will introduce themselves when they first speak. Now, we have a full day agenda today. But I have to tell you that item 5B, land at Littlefield, Sherborne, has been deferred to a future meeting. This was agreed after the agenda had been published, so we will continue with the agenda times as published. This means that we will break on completion of agenda item 5A, and we will reconvene at 2 o'clock for agenda item 5C. That is not, members, an excuse to make agenda item 5A last all morning. Go and do something else with your extra hour. So a brief word then about procedures for the benefit of the people viewing the meeting. For each application before us, I will invite the case officer to present their report and recommendations, followed by presentations from other officers. Members of the public have been invited to submit written representations to a maximum of 450 words. These submissions will have all been read by the committee, but up to 3 submissions in support and 3 against will be read to the committee by an officer. Following these representations, members can ask questions on points of clarification. Then the committee will deliberate and come to a view. At the end of which I will take a vote by roll call, and when I call your name, members, you will say either for or against or abstain. So that's really simple, and we're used to it by now. So moving on then to our agenda item 1, could we repeat for the minutes the apologies that we've had, please?
Emma Parker and Belinda Rideout.
Thank you very much, and we can record Councillor Cook's apologies until such time as he joins us, perhaps.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, do any of you wish to declare an interest in any of the items before us?
I do, Sherry.
Thank you.
I'm ward councillor for Charminster St Mary.
Say your name.
David Taylor.
Sorry,
David Taylor.
Yes. That your ward member, that doesn't preclude you from participating in the debate.
Thank you.
Yeah, Now I'm asking you, you have checked that, have you? You haven't expressed a view on this already?
No, I haven't.
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Now, can we confirm the minutes of our meeting of the 15th of September are a correct record? If anybody would like to indicate in the chat box if any of you have any corrections to the record. I'll give you a minute to do that. I'm not seeing anything coming through. I will then take the minutes as a true record and sign them when I can next get into the council. Public participation, I have already covered how that works, so we can move swiftly on to our first application. This is agenda item 5A, land west of Charminster Farm. This is an application for 82 dwellings, allotments and public open spaces. Bob Burden, our Senior Planning Officer, Major Projects, is to present his report. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman.
We'll just wait a moment while the slides come up. Thank you.
Right, item 5A, Chairman, Charminster Farm, Phase 3. Okay, just to locate you now, the village of Charminster, the centre, historic centre of the village is down here at the lower right-hand side of this view, and this is North Street running up through here. This is Wanchard Lane, Council Depot is there, Charminster Farm Industrial Estate is there, and this is Weir View here, and the A37 Dorchester Yeovil Road you see arcing around here. Several different shadings here which I think are useful for you to just understand. This is phase 3, and phase 1 is this area, the sort of slightly lilac coloured area here. That has been built and occupied, including a community hall, and that comprised a total of 70 dwellings. Phase 2 is here, and that is nearing completion, and that comprises 52 dwellings. The site we're looking at today is phase 3, in the darker blue here, which comprises 82 dwellings. And another couple of points just to note of interest. The defined development boundary basically runs along Weir View and then turns back along the A37 effectively. So the defined development boundary within it is this area here. You can see how close the site is in relation to that. Also, the conservation area is some way from the site, about 350 metres away from the application site, and that sort of skirts around part of the North Street here, with the majority going off to the east. That's just an aerial photo, just to give you a bit more of a feel for the texture of the context of the site. So our site, although it's not delineated on this thing, so I'll just point out where it is basically. The site runs along the frontage here of the A37, starting at the allotments, which is this area you can see here. Those would be relocated within the proposal, and it's adjacent to a cemetery and an extension to the cemetery there. And then phase 2, which obviously doesn't appear on here yet, is in this area here. Again, we've got the council depot up there, industrial estate there, and then frontage, natural hedgerow frontage, largely along Wanchard Lane here, and the SSE substation is at that corner there. And then down this edge of the application site here, there is in fact no boundary whatsoever there at the moment. It's totally open, so that would clearly need to be dealt with as part of the application. There's one dwelling just opposite the site there, Lynch Close, and a couple of dwellings just up there as well. But the edge of the site on the eastern site is round about on that line there. Right, now moving on to the site layout itself, which is delineated by the red line here you can see. So what in basic highways terms, the proposal includes a new link road from Wanchard Lane here, running right down through the site to link through a new junction with the A37 here. off the principal route there, we have secondary routes feeding into the housing here, and then private drives off those. We also have, you can see here, a little extension of the red line into phase 2 there. So that's part of securing a vehicular link with phase 2, and hence also into phase 1. So providing a different route through in either direction potentially there for vehicular traffic. We also have pedestrian links into phase 2. There'll be a couple of links around here and down here, and also potential for a link onto the footway down at the corner there onto Weir View. So just showing you how the permeability of the site would be integrated with existing land to the east. What this scheme does do, one of the key principles of the scheme is, because the site slopes, the high ground is up here, and it slopes in general sort of this way and that way down south. So this is the higher ground within the site, and the applicant has sought to position the great majority of built development on the lower part of the site, which leaves the higher site for various public open space and other appropriate uses on a more exposed, sort of slightly elevated site. Yeah. The route would clearly, from Wanchard Lane through the A37, it would also clearly produce an alternative route for vehicles from the industrial estate and the depot to use in order to reach the A37. There's also a national cycle route, National Cycle Network Route 26, which runs along here and then off along Weir View off the bottom of the slide here. So clearly that's useful because it enables anyone cycling to link in with that and cycle off towards Dorchester, about 2 miles away. The approach to the design of the scheme is based mainly around the perimeter block principle, whereby you have dwellings fairly close to the frontage, generally with relatively small small front gardens, but relatively large back gardens, as you can see from the layout here. And what this scheme has sought to do is create a real sort of sense of place through this wider avenue route here. You can see it's tree lined, slightly wider road, so giving a very distinct character to that part of the site. And then as we go into the site, we have more compact development here and some terraces in here. So there's significant variation in types of dwellings. It's all 2-storey, apart from 4 bungalows at this part of the site here, but all 2-storey, and a mix of detached, semi-detached and terraced units, as you can see. There's also a block of 6 flats down in this location here, with a communal parking area adjacent to it. As regards strategic landscaping along the western site boundary, because that's an open boundary at the moment, this would be planted. The proposal is to plant it with a 12-metre wide strategic landscape planting belt all the way down that boundary there. Our landscape officer would have liked 15 metres, but I think we started off with 10 and we've compromised on 12, and I think that's an acceptable width for planting, bearing in mind that's a good width to get some good specimens into, together with an understory as well. So that would be the strategic planting proposed on that boundary. On both the north frontage and the south frontages of the site, existing, as far as possible, subject obviously to visibility displays, as far as possible, existing hedgerows and trees where possible would be retained, and those boundaries would also be reinforced as appropriate to thicken those up. The avenue here would have a range of species planted on it. That would be for a final decision to be made yet, but we probably look to, rather than having uniform species along it, look to mix those up a bit, to give it a bit, bearing in mind it's in a rustic rural part of the countryside. We want to vary the species along there, but something on the lines, perhaps including field maple, hornbeam, small lead line, possibly that sort of thing, but that's a decision yet to be made as part of the detailed landscaping. But you can see that avenue is also able to extend right down to the A37 there. Another significant element of the scheme is the relocation of the allotments from down in this corner here. The existing site is really far from ideal because it's got very poor access. You have to walk along an unmade path from Weir View to reach it. They're privately owned allotments, so there's no real security of tenure and use of those in that context. There's no on-site water supply, and there's no dedicated car parking for it. But as part of this proposal, they would be repositioned, relocated in this area here, and you can see that area is quite a large area. In fact, the allotments would increase from increase by 900 square metres to 7,600 square metres overall area. So we'd have a larger area for allotments, not just for people in phase 2, but generally for people in the parish of Charminster, and provision for more of the allotments as well. And that's something that we would need to enshrine in a section 106 to ensure the appropriateness of timing for move, the nature of the soil used, and the detailing to go with that, as mentioned in my report. Right, we also have associated with the allotments 10 dedicated car spaces here adjacent to them, so that would be particularly useful for people living elsewhere in Charminster who could drive to the site and then do their work on the allotment. Obviously, anyone living nearby could very readily walk to the site. The scheme also includes planting of a community orchard, and that's shown at the top here, likely to be based around traditional fruit trees. There's also an area of woodland which is proposed here that would obviously contribute to just part of the public open space, together with ecological benefits, and also helping to screen off the substation just to the north there. As regards public open space, the scheme actually makes quite ample provision of public open space, and this area here would be a mix of grassland and wildflower meadow, so good, nice, large area of informal open space there. There would also be a locally equipped area of play that's suggested just in this location here, so good access and good vision to that. And you can see paths running up across the site as well. There's a path there which would link with Wanchard Lane as well. Turning to drainage matters, there's a small attenuation basin that would be provided here. That is a pretty small facility and would really deal with drainage from the northern section of the highway up here only. So there's just a relatively modest shallow basin that would go in that location there. The main two attenuation features are down here either side of the access into the site, and those are larger surface water drainage basins, and this one on the western side would have cellular containment within it as well. But those are appropriate structures, and the lead local flood authority have confirmed that they're content with those proposals, subject to final details which are conditioned. As regards foul sewage, there would be a small pumping station down here that would receive flows from phase 3, and those would be pumped on into phase 2 onto the network there. Right, just this slightly more detail on the layout here, just to point out a couple of things, just to give you a flavour of the materials. We've got a fair bit of brick and flint banding we've achieved around part of the avenue here. The red outline to dwellings is rendered finish, so we have some areas of predominantly brick. Red is brick. Green is the render. and blue is flint. So we have quite a mix of materials, but it's basically a vernacular traditional palette of materials, which is, you know, relatively consistent with what's happened elsewhere in other phases, and does pick up and is influenced by the older buildings of Charminster. And a mix of slate and plain tar roofs, the blue being the slate and the pink showing plain tar roofs. So quite a good mix and variety of materials being suggested. In terms of affordable housing, the scheme includes 35% on-site provision, 29 units, and the units indicated with the little asterisks you can see, like the terraces here and here, that pair there. The block of 6 flats there, that would be affordable units, as would these here and several more down there. So they're quite nicely dispersed throughout the site rather than gathering them all together in one point. In terms of cycle facilities, we've got a condition on for a scheme for cycle facilities to be submitted, but just to point out, with the flats, there's a cycle store on the end of the building there, which would accommodate 10 cycles. The garages on the site are at least 3 by 6 metres internal dimensions, so there's scope for putting bicycles in there as well as a motor vehicle. And we also have a condition on your note for an electrical vehicle charging scheme, so the applicant is happy to produce one of those as part of this scheme, which would be a useful inclusion. Street scenes, just to give you a flavour, this one at the top here is, as you enter the site, it's on the west side of the avenue there. This one here is the frontage to the A37. So the new A37 junction with it is in this location here, with some nice dwellings either side, which I'll show you a bit more on in a moment. That's the 6 flats there, you see. So quite an interesting variety of materials, but a uniformity of scale, which is quite nice along that frontage. And then this is the running down the east side of the avenue from the higher land, just giving you a flavour for the nature of that street scene. That's the lower section of it there, that being the gap through the road that feeds off to the east there. And this one is just a snapshot of in the heart of the development there, to give you an idea of that. And here we have the 4 bungalows, which would be at the top of the site, close to the Wanchard Lane junction there. So something I was keen to do on this scheme was to get a fairly good sense of an impressive gateway into the site, and whilst being influenced by vernacular principles, what we've got is a nice curved canted dwelling as you enter from the A37 here, with brick and flint banding, nice feature porch, nice cottage style windows, and on the eastern side of the access, pyramidal roofed structure dwelling with some nice ornamental porches to both aspects. So quite a nice bit of interest as you'd enter the site from the A37. And then along the avenue, just give you a flavour, that's the nature of the bungalows, which would be at the top of the site. Running down the avenue, these are the sort of designs of dwellings, mix of designs you can see. Running down there, just give you a flavour of that. And further house types, these three just happen to be, these are affordable houses, these, so they're sort of tenure blind, they're pretty, you know, indistinguishable from normal market housing, which is an objective we seek to achieve. This is the block of 6 flats, double aspect on those, which would be affordable dwellings as well. And then we also have the design here of the terraces and other detached units to give you a flavour of some of those different designs. You can also see there's some quite nice detailing on the porches and recessing to the windows, which always helps to give the dwellings a little bit more of a character in the street scene. Turning to some highways considerations, this is the new proposed access onto Wanchard Lane at the top of the site, showing you visibility displays associated with that. These are 4 bungalows here, that's phase 2 over there, and that's the public open space area here. And this is the proposed vehicle access at the southern end of the site onto the A37. Quite a lot of representations or comments about this junction here, and we have Steve Savage from the Highways here if you need to ask him any particular queries on that junction, but as you can see, it includes a cycle pedestrian refuge in the centre, and it's got a right turn lane to enable vehicles to turn from the A37 up and into the site as part of that design configuration. A few photos from the access I just showed you onto the A37. The position of that on the A37 here, this is the site frontage along here. So the new vehicular access would be going in about this location here, and you can see here there's actually a historic milestone here, so that's just sort of impinging onto that access, so that would need to be relocated, but obviously not far away. Otherwise the measurements on the milestone wouldn't be accurate, but it only needs a slight movement, and that can be covered by a planning condition to ensure it's retained in a similar location to nearby, close by. So we see the nature of the vegetation along the road. Unfortunately, that tree will have to be removed, but there will be a lot more planting, as you'll have seen from earlier drawings, involved with this scheme generally on the site and to the boundaries also. On this side, we've just moved over, so that's an agricultural access into the site here. So our access point is about here, so it just gives you an idea of the visibility to both east and west from this point onto the A37, which is a 50-mile-per-hour section. And this is just sort of turning round at the bottom end of the site. Just the A37 is just over here, so this is just looking into the site itself. This is just looking slightly to the west. I'm just showing this one because it shows that this is the area here where the largest attenuation basin would be established in this area here. And that sort of slight projection at the western side of the site. And then as you pan around to look north up the site, up the gentle slope of the site, so the 12-metre landscaping belt would go in this location along here, which would provide a fairly substantial boundary to the west side of the site. You can just make out there the electricity substation, and that's the hedgerow along the southern edge of Wanchard Lane there. And moving round to look more in an easterly direction, so Wanchard Lane just at the top of the site there. And then we can see here phase 2 nearing completion here, just beyond the site boundary of this application site. And we can also see here the existing location of the allotments, various small structures and sheds in that location there. And you can just see here where there's a gentle sort of slope down the site towards the southern edge of the site. The site isn't within the ONB, but I thought it'd be useful just to give you an indication of how it sits in relation to that. So our site sits just in this location here, and the AONB, 3 different types of shading here, indicating 3 different landscape character areas, but all the shaded areas, all 3 of these are the AONB, and the site is about 0.5 of a kilometre from the AONB. And it's, from the A37, just looking across towards the AONB, you can see the slightly higher land in the AONB there, and it starts sort of beyond the trees really here, but it just gives you a relationship, indication of the relationship with the setting of the AONB. And then at the top end of the site, this is Wanchard Lane. This is the construction access for phase 2, but it's in a fairly similar position actually to where the new access into phase 3 will actually be. You can see the nature of Wanchard Lane, native hedgerows and trees along the boundaries, and this is sort of following on from that view down there. If you continue on round, it just shows you more of the view down the rural lane of Wanchard there, with our site being over the other side of the hedge, as it were. So the main planning issues, it's outside but immediately adjacent to part of the development boundary. It's a very sustainable location, we consider, given the facilities available locally and the opportunities for using a bus service, etc., which exist in the area. Good cycle links there to Dorchester in particular. Indicated its relationship with the setting of the ONB. We feel that's acceptable in terms of its relationship with that. Affordable housing, they provided the requisite amount of 35% affordable housing on site, which would be a mix of affordable rented and shared ownership. And public open space, I've sort of indicated that there's quite a good mix of types of public open space available within this scheme, and about the importance of the allotments and how we could deal with the relocation and enhancement of that overall facility. Drainage is dealt with satisfactorily by attenuation basins and a pumping station for foul drainage. The scheme, 82 houses, would be a useful contribution towards our 5-year housing supply, which stands at 4.83 years. And highway issues, obviously new accesses involved, and only one definite requirement in terms of contribution on the 106, which I'll come to in a moment. So the recommendation is to delegate approval subject to a 106. And that would include the 35% affordable housing, public open space with management and maintenance details, relocation of the allotments together with the specification for the details of that, establishing the links, vehicular and pedestrian cycle with phase 2 and land to the east, a financial contribution towards the extension of the 30 mph speed limit on Wanchard Lane. That is something which is required by the Highway Authority in order to make this development acceptable. There are also other possible financial contributions which could be taken towards enabling off-site works, which are being offered by the developer and which the parish are supportive of. A restriction of motor vehicle access along Wanchard Lane and a weight restriction along the rear view. And legal planning advisor Philip Crowther is going to make some further comments for the benefit of the committee about that, because these measures are not strictly required to make this development acceptable in highway terms, but they are something that the parish are keen to pursue, and the developer is offering those, so they could be included potentially in the 106. In terms of conditions, obviously the plans list that was updated and provided to you with the update sheet. 3-year implementation as normal. Wall and roof material samples will be useful to ensure we get the right mix of materials. Means of enclosure details also required. Surface water management scheme, fairly standard conditions. Tree protection also required. Hard and soft landscaping scheme. And there is a slight update on the update sheet you've seen about the soft landscaping to ensure that's ongoing maintenance on that condition rather than a 5-year limit. Potential land contamination, if any, is discovered, just to cover that. Noise mitigation measures, because in proximity of dwellings to A37 and the Avenue Road, certain dwellings would need additional sound insulation. Landscape and ecological management plan, milestone relocation, which I mentioned on the A37. There's details of the sewage pumping station. If any sanding rails on the site are reusable, there's a potential for that. Electric vehicle charging scheme I mentioned. The various highways conditions which I've referred to. Cycle facility scheme is one of those as well. And highways, remove the excess spoil, and finally a construction environment management plan. Now I do have a slight addition to the conditions. The Highway Authority have just advised me that there is a further condition they would wish to see added. So what I'll do is I'll just read out that condition for members now, and I will obviously, if the scheme is approved, I will pass that through in a typed up version to the committee clerk for the minutes. But I've also received requests on at the junction of, I can probably just show it if I put it back. Yeah, just down, there's some off-site highway works required just down here at the junction of Weirview with the A37 there. And the Highway Authority have provided me an additional condition to the effect that before the development hereby approved is occupied or utilised, the proposed to the Weirview A37 junction as shown on drawing number 0890 PHL 102C, contained within Appendix C of the technical note dated 5th of the 8th of 20, shall have first been carried out in accordance with the specification, which shall first have been submitted to and agreed in writing by the local planning authority. There shall be no variation from the above drawing unless first agreed in writing by the local planning authority. And the reason these specified works are seen as a prerequisite for allowing the development to proceed, providing the necessary highway infrastructure improvements to mitigate the likely impact of the proposal. So in the light of that, Chairman, I would recommend that you delegate approval as set out in my recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bob. That was a really very, very clear and helpful presentation. I'm sure members will agree. Could I ask now, Steve Savage, our Senior Highways Officer, if you'd like to just briefly run through the highways aspect of this application? Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, as you've heard from Mr. Burden's presentation, the development site is served from two accesses. To the south, the main access onto the A37 will be provided in the form of a right turn lane with a central pedestrian stroke cycle refuge. This new junction will be subject to a Section 278 agreement and will be wholly provided at the applicant's expense. Given the quantum of development, the use of a right turn lane as proposed is acceptable, and I know that the parish they had some queries regarding this, but such junctions are generally used for developments of up to 300 residential units. The visibility at the junction fully complies with the guidance provided by Manual for Streets 2, and the sight lines which are proposed actually exceed the dimensions that are required for 60 mph traffic, even though the A37 at this location is subject to a 50 mph limit. So we're wholly satisfied with that junction. As you've just heard from Mr. Burden, the junction of Weirview with the A37 is also to be improved by amending the junction radii to facilitate easier access to this junction from the A37. Now, the northern access onto Wanchard Lane will take the form of a standard priority junction that will have visibility displays of 43 metres in each direction, taken from a 2.4 metre driver position, again identified by Manual for Streets for highways subject to a 30 mph speed limit. That said, because the access is actually on the outside of the bend, then you can actually get greater visibility than the statutory distance. And you can also just about make out on that plan that their forward visibility is something we also check. So if a vehicle was travelling from the west along Wanchard Lane and there was a vehicle waiting to turn right into the new access, we have a 56 metre visibility display there, which is a very safe stopping distance. So we feel this access design is satisfactory. We've also, as you heard, suggested that a traffic regulation be implemented for the western section of Wanchard Lane to restrict vehicle speeds to 30 mph to facilitate these visibility displays in this access. With regards to the internal road layout, it will be constructed to embrace the principles suggested by Manual for Streets and will provide a safe low speed environment. So it should be 20 mph or less by design. The main spine road is 6.5 metres through the site, providing the avenue effect, which we're all seeking here. The side roads themselves, the residential estate roads, will be 5 metres wide. Wherever footways are provided, then they will be 2 metres in width, the standard pedestrian width. Good pedestrian permeability is provided, as you've heard, by linking the site into phase 2, keeping pedestrians effectively on the low speed environment to reach local facilities. Highway Authority is satisfied that the proposed car parking numbers comply with our guidance. As you can see from the report, there are 215 spaces on site available for the residential units, 21 unallocated marked spaces, 10 for use for the allotments, and lots of opportunities for informal on-street car parking. Now, as I mentioned, the application includes a number of off-site changes. Wanchard Lane and North Lane Junction works to the east. Also an HGV restriction on Weirview. The Highway Authority is of the opinion that only the alteration to the speed limit on Wanchard Lane is considered in highway terms to be necessary and therefore justifiable for the development to go ahead. And as you've heard, Mr. Crowther will expand further upon this. So to sum up, Chair, whilst it's accepted that the proposal will obviously increase traffic flows on the local network, the links through to the strategic highway network are considered to be satisfactory and appropriate. The cumulative impact to the site cannot therefore be thought to be severe in terms of the NPPF, and subsequently the Highway Authority has recommended a conditional approval, and Mr Burden again has expanded on the conditions we've recommended. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve. That was again very clear. We've given our solicitor Phil Crowther several name checks, but I'm not actually sure he is the solicitor that's with us this morning. So is it Lara or Brian? Which solicitor is going to come in now?
Chairman, it is Phil Crowther.
It is Phil. Well, hello. Good. Thank you very much. Good. You weren't on my list when I checked at the beginning of the meeting, so I'm very pleased to see you. Would you like to just, for the benefit of the members and for anybody listening, just give us a little pointer on this question of the section 106s, just because this is not something that I think we've had before, and I don't want us to accidentally get it wrong. So if you could just give us a brief explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, this is an unusual position. As you've heard from Mr Burden and Mr Savage, and is set out on the update sheet, there is a contribution which has been suggested for restrictions along Wanchard Lane and the weight restriction, and that your officers do not consider that those are necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. So if you agree with that assessment, then those contributions which have been offered cannot be taken into account in your decision making as a matter of law. So the recommendation has been set out so that if you were to grant permission, and if you were to determine in line with the recommendation that they were not necessary, they could nevertheless be incorporated in the agreement if and only if they're offered by the developer. So if the developer withdrew the offer, then any resolution to grant would not be affected in any way.
I think that's very helpful. Thank you. We're clear about that now. Members, I have noticed one or two of you waiting to ask questions, but we will, if you don't mind, press on with the submissions, which is our usual way of doing it, and then I will take all of your questions together. So could I ask now, Jill, to read the submission from, first of all, from Charminster Parish Council, so we can hear what they have to say.
Yes, certainly.
Thank
so
you,
this is the Charminster Parish Council in support of the application. The Parish Council discussed this application at length at its meeting on the 1st of September. Our response to the consultation is as follows. The Parish Council supports the application to close the junction with Wanchard Lane and North Street. The Parish Council supports the application for a weight restriction on Weir View. The Parish Council believe all the residential roads in the development should have a speed limit of 20 miles per hour, so they are in line with the new speed limit through much of the existing village. This should be paid for by Wyatt Homes. The Parish Council still has concerns over the parish new junction with the A37, particularly the difficulty of turning right towards Yeovil during peak times without a central refuge to enable drivers to cross halfway. We are also concerned about cars queuing to get out of the junction, causing traffic to back up along the link road and preventing residents reaching their homes. The design and specification of the allotments need to be agreed with the Parish Council before starting on site. Wyatt Homes should provide the play equipment MUGA after consultation with the Parish Council, and this should be included in the S106 agreement. The Parish Council would also like to see the allotments and play areas and other new facilities managed by the Parish Council rather than a residents-owned management group, as these facilities would be for the benefit of the whole village. The Parish Council has concerns about the parking standards used, as Phase 1 has insufficient parking and is already experiencing problems with parking, especially trade vehicles that are in addition to residents' own vehicles. And that is the end of that support.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. And we have only one other written submission today, and that's from the applicant. So Jill, when you're ready, can we have that one, please? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wyatt Homes is proud of the new homes and community facilities that we are building at Charminster Farm. Phase 1, including the new community hall, was completed last year. Phase 2 is well advanced and is due to be completed this year. All of the new homes are occupied or reserved, with 80% of the residents moving from within Dorset. The application before you today is for Phase 3. This carries forward the design approach established by earlier phases and providing large areas of public open space and transport improvements that benefit wider area. Phase 3 would deliver 82 homes with a mix of house types and tenure, including 29 affordable homes, over 3.5 hectares of open space, including children's play area, allotments, woodland and wildflower meadow planting, and highway improvements, including a new link between the A37 and Wanchard Lane that will reduce traffic through the village, in particular HGVs. In addition, a seal payment of circa £1 million will be made to local infrastructure improvements. The proposals are a culmination of several years of engagement with statutory consultees and the community. This has included a well-attended consultation event in July 2019, meetings with the Parish Council, discussions with allotment holders and pre-application advice from officers. Amendments have been made during the application process, including additional landscaping, design enhancements, and refinements to the package of highway improvement measures. The proposals seek to reduce the environmental impact of development, though a master plan that supports good pedestrian and cycle connections, green spaces that provide a net gain in biodiversity, support health and well-being of residents and include sustainable drainage systems. Homes that are well built to stand the test of time, are energy efficient and incorporate features such as bat and bird bricks and provision for electric vehicle charging. This application comes before you as we enter a second national lockdown. The construction industry can make an important contribution to the economic recovery. At the local level, there are over 50 people employed on Phase 2 of Charminster Farm, which is due to complete at the end of the year. A decision to grant planning consent now would allow construction to roll forward onto Phase 3 in early 2021, supporting jobs and housing delivery. Phase 3 forms an important part of the Council's 5-year housing land supply, with housing delivery forecast from April 2021. In summary, the proposed scheme has been designed with care and attention to detail to ensure that it makes a positive contribution to the village. A timely and positive decision on this application is critical. And that's the end of that report.
Thank you very much indeed, Jill. Very well read. We're getting to know lots and lots of our officers as they do reading duty for this committee, don't they? And we're very grateful to that. I have 3 members now who've indicated they want to be. Can I just remind you that we take questions for clarification first. So if what you wanted to was to make a point, a debating point, then if you could hold off. But if it's a question, then go ahead. So Councillor David Taylor, yours is a question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Councillor David Taylor, Charminster St Mary Ward, I'm just noticed and picked up points basically from action point 16.40, which has been answered already because of the fact like the 20 miles per hour speed limit on the main development and the junction of Wanchard Lane and North Street. Can I confirm that that junction will be shut down?
Chair.
Steve, could you clarify that?
Certainly, Chairman. As you've heard, the traffic regulation order for the for potential improvement works at the North Street Wanchard Lane junction aren't part of this application. They are not deemed to be necessary by the Highway Authority to facilitate this development, but as Mr. Crowther pointed out, should you decide that it was of benefit, then the applicant has indicated that they would be prepared to pursue such options. Perhaps, Bob, you'd like to just clarify that in planning terms rather than my vague engineer terms.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there have been some discussions between the applicant and the parish council regarding that possibility of that restriction to motor vehicle access on Wanchard Lane in relation to North Street, that area, and the applicant is offering a contribution towards that. However, it isn't. It is offered and it can be potentially included in the 106 if you wish to today, but it is not a material consideration for you to be discussing on this application today, because the only requirement in highways terms is the extension of in terms of contributions, is the extension of the 30-mile-per-hour speed limit along Wanchard Lane towards Drake's Lane.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bob. It's just that you are fully aware how bad that junction is, and they can't see around the corner. They have to use the mirror to get out of the junction, and it's going to be a bit busier now with this development if it's approved today.
Thank you very much.
That's lovely. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions. Would you like me to ask them one at a time or all in one go?
One at a time, yes, please.
Okay, first question is quite simple. Page 33 refers to a water detention area. I presume that is an attenuation pond.
Yes, Chairman, through you. Yes, the small attenuation pond alongside the allotments, which I can point to, this one here, yeah, is variously referred to as attenuation or detention, and I'm guilty of having used both terms, I'm afraid, on that one, because it's mentioned in the technical document in that way. But yes, that is a reference to the small attenuation basin there.
Right, thanks, Bob. Second question, page 34, 8.4 refers to a high foul sewage inundation risk. What does that actually mean, and are the planners convinced that that risk has now been mitigated?
Well, it means it means a worrying scenario if not dealt with. But fortunately, it is, because what's happening is that there would be a foul sewage flows would from this phase 3 would travel down to a sewage pumping station down in this location here. Just off the edge of the attenuation basin there, and then that pumping station would pump the foul sewage into the network within phase 2. This is all being discussed with Wessex Water, who are content with that solution. Okay,
and question 3 is with regards to the moving of the allotments. Now, Section 8 of the 1925 Allotments Act puts in a huge amount of criteria for councils to go through if they move allotments, but I can't find any information online as to whether any of those rules apply to the moving of private allotments.
Right, through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not an expert on the Act, I have to say, Chairman, but from the point of view of the planning merits of this application, the right way to handle the relocation and enhancement of the allotments facility would be to include it in the section 106 as per my recommendation. But that would allow us in planning terms to ensure the minimal disruption in terms of timing of relocation of allotments from down here to up here. And it would allow us to provide for the various facilities that would go with that in terms of ensuring an appropriate quality of soil and its preparation, appropriate fencing, safeguarding around it, and the water supply. So yeah, that from the point of view of this application, we can adequately and appropriately handle that within the heads of terms within the Section 106 agreement and agreeing details as we move forward in that, if the application were approved, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Hall?
Sort of. I just asked because the Act actually says about getting permission from the Secretary of State for moving of allotments. So I'm just wanting to check what the legalities are, that's all.
Okay, can we park that unless one of our lawyers would like to come back and answer that question? What I think we can we not, Bob, safely say is that in terms of the users of these allotments, there is a net planning gain to them because they will have better allotments than they are leaving. They're larger, there's better parking, and there's water supply, and so we can be confident, can we not, that the allotment holders will be satisfied? And can we also be assured that they have been consulted? I know they will have, but if you could just confirm that.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's true to say this would be a significant enhancement over and above the existing allotment facility, and it would, because of the increased area and number of allotments, it would also open up opportunities for use beyond phase 3, not just to the other phases, but to the wider population of Charminster, if they wish to take an allotment on. Yes. Sorry, the last bit of your question.
No, that's fine. You've answered the question. The fact is that were the allotment holders consulted?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
Sure, if we could just.
What's happened is that the applicant has had quite a close ongoing dialogue with the allotments organisation, and he's fed me notes of the meetings they've had. So I've used those to inform what I've said and what I know will be required in a Section 106 specification.
Good, thank you. I think that's very helpful. That's the point for us to have in front of our mind, that there's a considerable net planning gain here, and we'll let the lawyers worry about the 1923 Act. Councillor Les Fry.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Councillor Les Fry, Dorchester West. I have two questions, which I'll ask one at a time, please.
Yeah.
Firstly, we have declared a climate emergency within Dorset Council, and there is a national discussion going on with that. I absolutely welcome the introduction of car charging points, but I see no mention of other renewables included in there. And bearing in mind that the gas boilers are about to be phased out and banned, can the planning officer please advise me what other renewables and sustainable items will be included in the developments, please?
Chair, through you,
yes,
I can advise the applicant intends to use, in terms of general sustainable construction, low flush WCs, flow restricted taps and showers, energy efficient construction principles, energy efficient lighting, and white goods. Window size orientations to optimise daylighting and solar gain, Chairman.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Is there any inclusion of solar panels, ground or air source heating and water recovery?
I haven't got any details specifically on that, Chairman. It's something we could, for example, add an informative on to encourage the consideration of the use of those, perhaps in this case, Chairman, as a possible way forward on that point.
I think that would be very helpful. As we have this discussion at almost every meeting, there is only a certain amount of policy at the moment that Dorset Council has in our local plans, so we can't insist on measures that are not covered by policy. So an informative note is quite often as far as we can go, and I would be very happy with members' agreement to do that, because I think it's something that we we would want to be doing with almost every application now, because we would be looking for developers to do everything that they can in terms of renewables. So if we could just note that's what we would like to add, that informative, and then I think we will add that to the I think we have to add that to the recommendation when we come to decide this matter. But that's a very well made point, Les. You had
I had a second question, but I see that Councillor Brian Heatley wants to speak on this point in particular. I'm happy to let him. I know there are others waiting, but I have a second question. Did you want to, Councillor Brian Heatley, to speak on this point whilst we're on the matter?
Was that Councillor Heatley? Was this the point on renewables that you were wanting to make?
It was very much the same point.
Right.
I wanted to draw the committee's attention to the West Dorset local plan, which has a policy environment 13, new buildings and alterations stroke extensions to existing buildings are expected to achieve high standards of environmental performance. Now, we've heard a little bit from Bob Burden here, but there is a lot more that could be done as far as we can see in this particular development. What is more, in the text in the West Dorset plan, it says a sustainable design and construction statement should be submitted with applications, clearly explaining what measures have been incorporated to contribute to the sustainability of the design. Now, I don't know whether that is something that is obligatory. I don't even know whether it has been submitted in the case of this application. My original question was going to be, have we had such a statement?
Chair, if I could comment, that little list I read out earlier was a brief addressing of the sustainable construction principles, those points I mentioned earlier in that little list, including the energy efficient construction, etc. Obviously, they need to comply with current building regulation standards, of course, and those are quite, those are quite stringent in terms of ensuring the efficient, effective use of sustainable materials these days. So that would also give, some useful weight to that objective.
Thank you very much. The question we have, yes, Councillor Heatley, please.
I'm sorry, but I do want to press this a bit further because there is something in the national planning policy framework, section 152, which says that in determining planning applications, local planning authorities should expect new development. And then it goes on to say, amongst other things, comply with any development plan policies on local requirements for decentralised energy supply, unless it can be demonstrated by the applicant, having regard to the type of development involved in its design, that this is not feasible or viable. Now, it seems to me that environmental performance includes decentralised energy supply, the sort of things that Councillor Fry was talking about, solar panels and so on and so forth. And it seems to me that 152 in the MPPF does give us ground for saying that applicants have to demonstrate whether that is feasible or viable. And although, as Mr. Burden says, we have been told various things about water supply and so on and so forth, I don't think we've had anything of that kind. Now, we're talking about adding an informative around this. Should we not be, and I say this very tentatively because I'm a new boy here and I don't quite understand how these things are done, but shouldn't we be having something which is like a condition which says, please, you are going to tell us why in this application it's not feasible or viable to do things like solar panels and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much, Councillor Heatley. I will remind all committee members, because we just need to stay focused on this. We can't rewrite an application or change an application by committee. The application that before us is the application we are considered, not the application we might have liked to have seen. So the choices before us are we either find this application acceptable as it is, or we don't. And if we don't, it has to be on valid planning grounds. So if we don't have the option here, which we wish every meeting we did have, to rewrite an application to make it a little bit better. So we have to just, so I would go back to Bob now, essentially to narrow this to.
Chairs, Hannah Smith, could I just comment on that policy quickly?
Yes, please,
if
Hannah.
that's okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor, for raising this policy. It is obviously an important point. Policy EN 13 basically says, this is the actual text of the policy, which I know you've quoted from, that new buildings and alterations, extensions to existing buildings are expected to achieve a high standard of energy environmental performance. And the points that are noted are, for instance, improved draft protection, increased roof insulation, secondary glazing, an energy efficient boiler, or installation of a ground source heat pump. But in terms of the policy requirements, it's not prescriptive in terms of what we have to include here. So I think the problem we'd have if we impose a condition that says you have to use solar panels, it goes beyond what reads or a sort of. I'm not saying that. Sorry. If we're too prescriptive in what we asked for, it's not really what the policy is asking for. And Bob has already explained how the developer has satisfied that condition with that list of energy performance measures, which does tie in with the policy requirements of that condition.
Yes, can I just ask Hannah or Bob, between you, please, can you just be absolutely explicit? In your view, is the application before us, it meets the requirements of that Councillor Heatley has outlined here that you've just discussed? Presumably you would not have brought this report to us, this recommend, if it, in your view, it didn't meet these requirements.
Yes, that's right, Chairman. I don't know if Hannah wants to continue with her sort of few words, but yeah, I'm satisfied it's sufficient. So we are the committee. If the committee were to strive to go further than your recommendations, we would therefore be on in difficult territory, because we're going beyond. We're being more prescriptive than the policy allows. Is that a fair summary? I think so. Yes, I think so, Chairman. I think we have sufficient information submitted to give sufficient addressing to ENV 13, Chairman. Yes.
Yes, it's frustrating, Councillor Heatley, I know, because we all get exactly where you're coming from, but it's my job as chair to make sure that we stay within the bounds of what we are allowed to do in this committee, and not what we would wish to do. So I think I might leave that matter.
Chair, may I make one rejoinder to that?
Yes, you may.
I'm not arguing that we should prescribe that they do solar panels or anything of that kind. I quite understand that, but I am saying that MPPF 152 gives us a justification for saying that they must justify what they are doing in terms of whether it's feasible and viable or viable. It's not a matter of accepting or not accepting the development. It is a matter of putting some condition on them which says, before they get on with it, please will they show us why it's not feasible or viable.
I think Mr. Smith just answered that, but Hannah, do you want to come back again with why we couldn't put such a condition? I'm not sure where that would get us to, but Hannah, could you clarify that point for us, or Bob?
Well, Chairman, I'm just looking at paragraph 152 now. Local planning authorities should support community-led initiatives for renewable and low-carbon energy, including developments outside areas identified in local plans or other strategic policies that are being taken forward through neighbourhood planning. I think it's a more. I don't think it's quite specifically tailored, that phrased to the particular application we're looking at, given the information we've got and given How are we satisfying ENV 13, Chairman?
Chairman,
No,
Chairman
thank you. I think that's clear.
Chair, I would agree with that. It's saying that we should be supportive of community-led renewable energy projects, but how to impose the requirement for a community-led renewable energy project on this scheme, it is sort of out of kilter with the remit of this scheme, I think. But it's obviously the NPPF is guidance, and we have to have strong regard to it. But our development plan is the starting point for informing what we require in this application. I think it would just be going beyond the scope of this current application to require that.
Yes,
having regard to what the applicants already submitted.
Thank you. I think that's very clear. It's beyond the scope of this application and it's beyond the remit of this committee. Can I ask Phil Crowther, our senior solicitor, and see you're wanting to come in, and then I think we've probably discussed this. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to provide some clarification, I think the paragraph in the NPPF that Councillor Heaton is referring to is paragraph 153 in the current version, which says that new development should comply with any development plan policies on local requirements for decentralised energy supply, unless. So I think the point is that the NPPF is merely reflecting the legal position that it's the development plan that takes priority. So, and you've had an explanation from Mr. Burden and Mrs. Smith about the application of policy ENV 13. So I don't think the NPPF actually takes that policy any further. Thank you.
But we could put an informative note in about this, could we?
We could, yes.
Yes, so everybody hold that thought, if you would, please. Councillor Fry, I'm aware that you had further questions.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Les Fry, Dorset West. Car parking, there's considerable mention on page 42 about car parking there, but it seems to me the numbers that are allocated include the garages themselves. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm sure all the panel would know that probably only 20% or less of those car garages will actually be used for car parking. So can we just have a definitive number of what the car parking spaces will be for the 82 houses, please, excluding the 10 places for the allotments?
Yes, could we have an answer to that question, please, and our usual reference to the manual for streets? Bob, is that you? The exact number of car parking spaces, please. Or is it?
Chairman, if I could just come in, I did give an indication as to the parking spaces. We do accept garages within the parking calculation if they measure 6 by 3. They are of a size that a person could choose to park a car in and could physically get it in there. I do take your point, Councillor Fry, that some people choose not to park their cars in there and they would park on their drives or on the street. We're confident that the layout that we have, which has had a swept path analysis carried out on it for a refuse vehicle, is sufficient to accommodate on-street parking. And of course, as I've told the committee many times before, people shouldn't be parking where they cause an obstruction. That's a police matter to enforce, or a danger. And I know you'll then say, well, it'd be nice if you ever see a policeman out here, but the point is that it complies with the authority's guidance on car parking with regards to the provision of allocated, unallocated and garage provision. And we're not in a position that we could ask them to provide any more. My personal view looking at this, I'm not the case engineer, I've come in at the 11th hour to look at this. I think there's a very good provision of car parking and I think the on-street availability is high. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. The key point there being that we're not in a position to ask for more because the advice from Highways is that it is sufficient. Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my question's partly been answered, but I'd like to go back to the allotment and the concerns of the current allotment holders about the fertility of the soil. I no doubt Matthew Hall will be able to, Councillor Hall will be able to help out here. But is there anything in the conditions that ensures that the fertility of the soil is to a certain standard when the allotments are moved? That's my first question. I have another one.
Yes, can we have an answer to that? Who's looking after the soil on these new allotments?
I'll respond to that, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we'd use the Section 106 agreement is because it can handle sort of nuanced matters such as soil quality. We can ensure that we get the right sort of composition and quality of soil, and that is a point that has been raised previously with the applicant in his discussions with the allotment people, and rightly so. So that would definitely be included in the specification, Chairman.
Good, absolutely. And topsoil that is weed free, otherwise they'll spend their first 10 years getting rid of the bindweed. Your second question, Councillor.
Excellent, Chairman. And my second question is on the weighting that the local plan should take, as once again we have a development here that's outside of the development boundary. So I'd like to know what the weighting is and whether it's worth doing local plans if we keep building outside.
Well, Chairman, of course, we're in the situation whereby we have an emerging new Dorset local plan, which has obviously got somewhere to go. But the position we have here is, okay, yes, we are outside the defined development boundary, but we are extremely close to it. And we do not have a 5-year housing land supply. We're at 4.83 years at the current time. So in that situation, our policies for resisting development outside defined development boundaries are substantially weakened. So therefore, we need to look very carefully at whether or not sites that come forward outside the defined development boundary are in effect sustainable sites, which undoubtedly this is. And if they are, subject to details, we should be approving them, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, has your question been answered, or do you still have a question?
No, thank you very much. I just wanted to know the open space or the wildflower meadow, whatever, who will actually be looking after that once completed? And have any recommendations been made for Dorset to adopt the roads within the site after completion, or will they remain private? Thank you.
Right. Flowers first, please.
Yeah, Chair, on the first point, the public open space would be, its management and maintenance would be ensured through the Section 106 agreement by a management company, and it might, in this case, it might be the parish councils who appear to have expressed some interest in that. I know they're certainly interested in the allotments. They may also take on the public open space, but that would be ensured through a management company or other suitable management organisation, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Chair, shall I answer the adoption?
Yes, please.
As you're all very well aware, we cannot force a developer to offer a highway for adoption, but the developer has indicated that they will be offering the roads and the associated footways, and the geometry of the highway is such that it is suitable for adoption. So whilst we can never say and be 100% certain that the roads will be ours and will be publicly adopted, I think there's a very good chance that these will be, bearing in mind that the other phases have been as well. Chair, if you'll just allow me, with regards to Councillor Fry's car park inquiry, I've been carrying out a very quick count of the numbers on the plans, but I think the pertinent point, and you just about make it out on the site layout there, is that lots of the properties, for example, the bungalows at the entrance to the site, they have garages and very long drives. So the car parking allocation includes only a space in front of the garage, a single space, but invariably they have 2 spaces in front of all of the drives. It's an unusual layout, if you like, with that respect. For example, where Mr. Burden's got his cursor, if you look to the properties just to the north, we have the blue is the garage, the rectangles in front of the parking spaces, and we've got space for another 2. So again, I'll reiterate, Councillor Fry, I think that the on-site car parking provision is particularly good in this instance. So hopefully that's clarified matters.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. Can I, Councillor Mary Penfold, you've been waiting very patiently. Your question.
Thank you very much, Chairman, but Councillor Jones has just asked the question I was going to ask.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. I think I'm now going to move to Councillor Apothecary, who I think would like to begin the discussion. Val, Councillor Apothecary.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have any questions. I would just like to comment now, please. Personally, I think this is a very attractive site. I like the principal street. I particularly like the boundary planting and the open spaces. It's not overdeveloped, which is refreshing. I'd like to give my congratulations to the developer and our planning officers and propose approval of this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Apothecary. Would someone like to comment further or second that?
Second, please, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor seconded. Has anybody any further comments to make, or are we ready to move this to a vote? I don't want to not let you have a debate. We have a proposer and a seconder. I'm not seeing. Oh, is that Councillor Fry? Did you want to speak?
Yes, I mean, I think this is a good proposal. I welcome this. I think it's well designed, and I think we are missing and picking up on Councillor Heatley's looking at the MPPF planning for climate change. I think they could have gone further on this measure, and I think this is something we all need to push. Overall, it's a good development. It's just missing a little bit in there for me.
Right, thank you very much. Anybody, any further comments? No, excellent. Right, well, we are now going to vote on the slightly revised.
You didn't give me a chance to press the button, Chairman.
Councillor Andrews,
give a little bit of time,
no.
Please. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I too echo Councillor Fry's comments, and if we're not going to make a stand soon, this is going to be another 4 years before we actually insist that we put in sustainable development. I don't know if this is the right time or the wrong time to do that, but I'm totally behind what Councillor Heatley has said, and the comments that Les Fry has said. But like I say, do we make a stand now or don't we? Are we going to take this to legal or aren't we? Because we would have a hell of a lot of backing, especially as the Dorset Council has declared a climate emergency. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we all echo those sentiments, absolutely. But I think we've been giving very clear guidance as to what we as the planning committee can do with the application that is before us. So I have had a proposer and a seconder. Councillor Heatley, did you again? What would you like to say?
Can I just say briefly, I appreciate we're in a very difficult position over sustainability and so on and so forth, and I'm grateful for the little progress we've made this morning. I think we have things to think about outside this meeting on this. Yes. I would not press this to the point of opposing this particular development.
Yes, no, that's very helpful. I think that you're right. Your key words there was outside of this meeting. There is a discussion and it is going on, and we are part of it, about what we want to see in the forthcoming local plan. And of course, just for what it's worth, it won't be as long as 4 years, because as the local plan gets nearer and nearer, that starts to carry weight. So I think the way we take this forward is that we press for all of this stuff to be in as much detail and with as much teeth as we can manage in the forthcoming local plan. We did, however, say that we would have an informative note that we would wish to see. I'm trying to remember the words that we used, that we would wish to see the developer make this development as sustainable as possible, and we would like to see, we're grateful for the renewables that are on offer, but we would like to encourage the developer to put in any more that can be possibly done within viability. Is that a decent enough informative note to put in our minutes? Didn't seem very clear.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if Hannah has a particular protocol you normally follow when you've got a sort of informative we're drafting, or whether or not we draft it as officers, or whether
you
or not
you draft it, and along the lines that I think that I've just said on behalf of the committee.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Sherry. I think that's adequate to be able to formulate a informative note to make.
You get the gist of it.
Yeah, thank you.
We want it to be as renewable as possible. Right. So we're now back with, we've had a proposer and a seconder. and Councillor Apothecary and Councillor Taylor, just to be absolutely clear, that you have proposed, your proposal is to approve as per the recommendation within the amended suggestion on the update sheet, with the addition and the additional highways condition outlined by Bob.
Yes.
Yes, please, Chairman.
Good. Okay. Is everybody clear? If we could have, if it's possible, to have the recommendation, the revised recommendation on the screen while we vote. If not, don't worry, but I do like to have.
Yes, Chairman. by sod's law, my screen has just frozen, so I can't move to that recommendation.
Right.
But, obviously, it's on your agendas, and we have that slight adjustment, which includes the applicant has offered those additional financial contributions. So if you wish to include those in it, then you can obviously do so.
Yes. So that's clear. So I am trusting members that you have listened so carefully that you're absolutely clear about what we're voting, but it is the proposal to approve as per the recommendations with the amendments suggested in our update sheet and the additional highways condition outlined by Bob this morning. So I'm now going to put it to the vote. As I call your name, could you say whether you are for or against or abstain? Councillor Andrews.
For.
Councillor Fry.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Councillor Heatley.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Penfold.
For.
Councillor Apothecary.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For, and an excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. That brings us at 11:26 to the end of the first part of our meeting, and thank you all very much. I think that was a really excellent debate around, and some good points that came out for considering outside of a planning meeting. And if I may say, Bob, that's the first time that you've made a presentation to our committee, and it was really, really excellent and very, very clear. So thank you very much indeed. I will now close the meeting and we will reconvene, members, at
Chair, can I just make a comment, please?
Yes.
We've had a very good and active discussion over climate change, and I think we're all on the same page on this. The PPF page 44 or point 14, meeting the challenge of climate change, flooding and coastal change, does give very good direction on where developers should be doing and including. And for example, plans should take a proactive approach to mitigating and adapting to climate change, taking into account the long-term implications for flood risk, climate change, water supply, biodiversity and landscape, and it goes on. I don't want to read the whole article.
No.
It is worth people reading it, but I think developers are dodging the issue, and although it's not mandatory at this moment, it is advisory and recommended that they take these things. And it's a shame when developers have to be made to do something, because none of us at the moment have to recycle or use renewables, and I would like just a greater encouragement by whatever means, and hopefully the press are picking up on this, that developers are getting the message that we, the council members, want to see greater use of supporting climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Certainly, the developers can repeatedly from our meetings can be in no doubt that that's the direction of travel, and that we members would like to see more renewals and more sustainable building, and that we want this sooner rather than later. However, I must say, I wouldn't want to say that any of our developers are dodging any issue. They're doing it. They're doing what they have to do, and we wouldn't allow them to get away with dodging anything. But yes, you're absolutely right, and that was a point well made, and one that we make every time in this meeting. So on that note of which we're all in a heated agreement, I will now bring this part of the meeting to a close at 11:28, and I will remind members that we must be back here for the second half of our meeting at 2 o'clock. And if I could ask you to foregather at about 10 minutes to 2, so we can check the technology and make sure that everybody is here. Until then, thank you very much indeed.